So tonight we have Danielle Doggett of the Sailcargo with us, and she's zooming in from Costa Rica. We're so grateful she could be with us tonight. So she has 16 years of sailing on traditional ships and is one of the founders and acting CEO of Sailcargo. Growing up just north of Kingston, Ontario, she began her sailing career with the St. Lawrence II, moving on to larger ships at age 16. Founder of Topsail Rigging Limited, she has focused her attention in recent years on gaining knowledge of the build stage of large-scale projects, including working along Sailmaster BV in the Netherlands. She's an advisor to the Caribbean Sail Training Association, was the captain of the flagship of Barbados, sailing cargo schooner Ruth for the rigging, launch, and seal trials. Tonight, we are so grateful you could join us, Danielle. Thank you so much for being here, and we look forward to a wonderful evening with you.
Very excited to be sharing with everybody here this evening. So thank you for having me. And yeah, I look forward to a great evening.
Do you want to start with your presentation?
Sure, yeah. I'd just like to introduce the presentation really briefly. This presentation that you're going to see is a bit of a hybrid, like our boat. And it's a cross between a business pitch and a presentation for yourselves. So it's going to bring in some different elements. And the reason I use this was I hope it encourages some different types of questions. Okay. So again, I actually really encourage you to interrupt me with questions. So please don't hesitate to do that. My name is Danielle, and I'm the director of Sailcargo Inc. Here we go. So what is the problem we are addressing? We are addressing a really important problem which affects everybody around us. 90% of everything that we own and is around us has been shipped on an ocean liner. And these vessels operate outside of territorial waters, which means they're not really regulated in the same way that a car or a train or anything else that's on terrestrial land-based actions are monitored. So if you just look at this slide, I'm not going to dwell on it because I don't see the point. I'll just let you look at that. And if you have questions about this later, I'm happy to go into it. But these are the problems we are looking to address. And our solution to this is to provide a shipping service that is free of emissions, pays fair wages, and is built using regenerative materials. So what you're seeing there is a naval architect's rendering of our flagship, Ceiba. Our naval architect is Manta Marine Design, which is originally Dutch and is now based in New Zealand. And yes, this is a wooden vessel that you can see before you that we are currently building. Our mission is to eliminate, I'm just reading it. Our mission is to inspire change in the shipping industry, and we will eliminate fossil fuels from the maritime sector by proving the value of clean shipping. And so right now what you can see in the center there is Ceiba, which is our flagship. And we hope to actually expand this onto two different ways. One's going bigger and one's going smaller. And so you can see over here on my left side of the screen is a coastal schooner. That is 65 feet overall. Ceiba is 145 feet overall. And I only know this in meters. The eco-liner, which you see on the far side, is 168 meters. So that's times 3 approximately. So it's about 400 feet or something like that. Sorry, that's probably wrong, 450. But this is what we're really looking at as a company, as how to provide a solution. Our target products range. Really right now, what we are looking at is organic products such as turmeric, cotton, avocado, coffee, cacao, vanilla, all these sort of things. This is what's really been popular in the emission-free shipping sector so far. This is what has been popular to us. However, it's important that we differentiate ourselves because as Sailcargo Inc., we actually will ship anything. Anything, you know, there's limits. But if somebody comes to me and says, Danielle, I'd really like to ship tires emission-free, we will not reject them because our mission is to prove the value of clean shipping, not to bar people from being able to ship emission-free. And so that's a little bit of a distinction which causes some hands to go up sometimes. So our market size, I'll let you read into this, and especially as this is being recorded, I'll let people in the future read into this. But our market size is absolutely massive. People always ask us, how will you find enough cargo? And it's really not about that, because 90% of everything, as I mentioned, goes on ocean liners. As we've seen today recently, is that the Ever Given is one of the largest ships out there, and the scale of this is absolutely massive. And so this is just, we're just the tip of the iceberg with our small ship Ceiba. Ceiba can transport 9 TEU, or 9 20-foot containers, the equivalent of 9 20-foot containers. We don't ship containers on this vessel. And the largest vessels out there today can ship approximately 22,000 containers. So Ceiba is very small. Despite this, she will be the largest emission-free cargo ship in the world when she's launched, which to me is very interesting. As a grassroots company that's come up and is building a wooden tall ship, we will be producing the largest ocean-going emission-free cargo ship in the world, which I'm really not impressed with all the other shipbuilders out there that have industrial yards. They should be beating us at this. But we're going to be setting that precedent. Our business model is very simple. It's the same as any other cargo ship, or if you want to think about a trucking company, you put things on the truck, they move them, you take things off the truck. The truck does not own the goods. You're simply paying for a service. And so that's what our service will be. We add value to a client's product by eliminating the transportation carbon footprint. We also believe that this element of eliminating that carbon footprint is going to be very important, because it's going to elevate people's products to a much higher level. Formerly it was, fair trade or organic, or there were bio packaging, or all these other parts of the supply chain that needed to be addressed or identified or repaired. And we truly look at this as one of the final broken links in an otherwise sustainable supply chain. So right now, if you were to have coffee sitting in Port Townsend, for example, that's going to be an imported coffee, and you can definitely get organic, micro lot, fair trade, bio packaging, renewable energy, lighting the store, everything, but that will have been shipped with a carbon footprint either on an airplane or a ocean-going vessel. And so when we say you'll be the only truly emission-free coffee in that area, that elevates a product, and that's very special. This is getting into a bit of the business pitch side of things. If anybody has questions about this side, we can come back to it, but really what we're doing is trying to decarbonize maritime energy and transportation systems. So if we have questions, we can come back to that. Yeah, but back to the actual shipbuilding, which is what you folks are here for, as far as I understand, is we're doing regenerative shipbuilding. And so this means that we are also doing tree planting. We are using wood in a sustainable manner. And yeah, I'm going to get a little bit into the shipbuilding. This part, I'm going to just be showing some pictures. So again, if you have questions, don't hesitate to ask. This photo that we're seeing right here, I don't know if you can see my mouse. No. This photo that we're seeing right here is primarily my buddy Dylan. This was the day that we hoisted up the stern post. And so this is Wapinol. This is an extraordinarily dense hardwood. And that stern post, which is made of 2 parts, weighed about 2.2 tons, metric tons. We hoisted that by hand using block and tackle. And it went successfully. When you look at the frame, so this is the stern, or the end of the vessel, the aftermost part of the ship. When you look at the frames, what you can see is that there are a couple that really stand out that are darker. And those are also made of Wapinol. Wapinol is the same as the stern post. The other ones are made of that Spanish cedar or mahogany. And what's really nice about the mahogany, again, is that it's really quite lightweight compared to the Wapinol, which are placed there strategically. So I don't know off the top of my head referring to this photo, but there might be a bulkhead, or there might be a mast step, or there might be a hatch carling, where we decided to put in a Wapinol frame.
Danielle, we have a couple questions here.
Oh, sure.
From Sakai, he says, what do you mean that Atlantic Sail Cargo clients are converting to Sail Cargo Inc.?
You're reading. We are receiving interest from, so let me start, sorry. In Europe, primarily, there are smaller pioneer trailblazing sailing cargo companies. They would be Fair Transport, Greyhound, formerly Greyhound, Aventure, which is part of Timber Coast, Nudon Traders. There's a long list. Most of these people are my close friends. And they are, the most successful one, or the true pioneer, is Tres Hombres, where I started 11 years ago on this path. And Tres Hombres is owned and operated by the Dutch company Fair Transport. They are 1/10 of the size, or they have 1/10 of the capacity of Ceiba. And we are receiving quite a bit of interest of existing clients of that group, European group, or clients that would have been part of them. And they say, well, we like what you're doing. And so what we're having is a conversion or attraction from all over the world, from people and producers where we're not even promoting cargo lines yet. And so we're having attraction and conversion of clients, which is very exciting for us.
That's great. And then I have a question from Jen Rabinowitz, asks, how will Ceiba maneuver in strong currents with little to no wind?
With her 100% electric engine. So this is something that's really interesting. Ceiba's primary engine is her sails. Ceiba's auxiliary engine will be two 150 kilowatt electric motors. They're going to be not parallel. They'll be independent, so we'll have twin screw or two propellers. And this will be a regenerative system, which means that when the ship is actually sailing under sail power, truly sailing, when there is sufficient wind, we'll be able to adjust the variable pitch propellers and capture or regenerate energy to whatever amount or degree we decide. And this is what's going to allow us to maneuver in and out of port. And we actually have an in-house naval architect, as well as an in-house electrical mechanical engineer, which we're really spoiled to have them both. And so we're going over and over all these different calculations about that. This is, of course, in association with our overall naval architect and our engineer, which we have from Switzerland, who are remote. But we should be able to do any sort of in and out of port, emergency situations, you know, if there were, you know, goodness, we hope not, but man overboard, anything like that, we would be able to just flip those on. These will also be supported by solar photovoltaic solar panels, as we'll be operating in the equatorial zones, which has very strong sun, it's very sunny. And so that will be auxiliary to that. The only time that Ceiba will not be powered by 100% clean energy is when we happen to plug in at a port where the power grid is not supported by clean energy. And here in Costa Rica, we are extremely lucky to be able to say that 99% of the energy, depending on the rainy season, is produced by renewable energy. So even when Ceiba plugs in her home port, it will still be very close to 100% renewable energy.
Wow, that's amazing. All right, that's all the questions for now.
Okay, well, here we go into some woodwork. Oh, I lied. This is Astillero Verde. This is just the very tip of our land. This is the shipyard. Astillero means shipyard. Verde means green. So you can see why we call it Green Shipyard. This is actually our nonprofit educational center, which is at the very tip of the land. This land is 1.4 hectares, or approximately 3 acres. And you can see we're in the mouth of an estuary, which is really beautiful because we have some different types of biodiversity kind of meeting right where we are, because on the left side of this picture, it's going into the Gulf of Nicoya, which is essentially really getting into the open ocean of the Pacific. And on the right hand of this photo is the mouth of the estuary, or going up into a river. And I live up there. The second story is my house. and we've seen huge crocodiles right in that area. So as well as the pink roseate spoonbill, which I had to call my biologist friend about that. I said, there's a flamingo that looks like he had his bill run over. What kind of bird is that? And she says it's a roseate spoonbill, Danielle. So we're very lucky with the beautiful wildlife we have here. Just another photo of the area. Yeah, this is actually a place where we hope to be doing mangrove restoration in the future. This is on the other side of the Gulf of Nicoya. This is two different photos from the same day. This is the same photo, but gives a little slightly different perspective. This was a long time ago when we only had a few of the frames up, and this is a dry fit. So you'll notice there's no tar, glue, or anything in this photo. It's a dry fit. And this is the after half, or the bottom half of a double sawn frame. And these, in the top left-hand photo, you can see that these are two futtocks. If I'm not mistaken, those are actually the same kind of wood, but the color does look quite different. And what these photos are really showing are the cokes or cogs or coaxes. There's a lot of ways to say that, which is sort of like a shear key or a type of tenon that we use to increase strength in our frames. So to go over some of those terms, frames, I think we're familiar with. That is the big U shape that we're looking at. This is like a close-up of the frames. And then we have the futtocks. Futtocks are the elements of the frame. So when we have a frame that's this shape, it's very large. So one part of it might be made up of 3 to 4 pieces, which you can see in this one photo. And then, so we have the bottom layer. And then so that we make those joints stronger, you lay a top layer on top of that with additional futtocks. And you're going to stagger those joints like this, so that you don't have any weakness. And we elected to use coaxes or cokes to increase that strength. And these cokes are made of, if I'm not mistaken, wapinol as well, so a extra dense hardwood. I don't know if there's any questions about this, because the shear keys or cokes are not super common, but we're really into them. So if there's any questions about that, let me know.
Sakai asked, what is the spacing of the coaxes?
That depends on the joints and if there are other trunnels or bolts. So each one is assessed separately. And I don't know the answer. You'd have to actually speak to one of the guys who works in the framing stage, but it is assessed separately. Mm-hmm.
That's it for now.
We do use a lot of power tools. Chainsaws are one of our main tools. I swear the guys literally do use the chainsaws as planers, which is interesting. But we also do use hand tools from time to time when it is appropriate. So we're really a hybrid shipyard in a lot of ways, where we're bringing the old technology together with the new. And really what we want to do is just find that harmony between them. So this is working on one of the frame futtocks or pieces of the frames. Just going through. Here we have a French timber framer and shipwright that was with us named Mente. And what we're looking at here is a half frame in the stern section. So these are the dead woods that he's leaning up against, made of solid wapinol. This is a really intense solid wall of hardwood. And actually you can see Manu in the background. That's interesting. And we've just about lifted this into place, this half frame. And he's just putting a bit of tar on there right before it sits into that notched out piece that you can see. So this is a fun moment right before it's about to get put into place. This is a photo of steaming in a beam shelf. I think this is a beam shelf. There are so many elements. This is beam shelf, and on top of that, it's going to be the shear clamp. And so this is, we actually have separate decks inside the cargo hold on the fore and aft, where it is crew accommodations or the engine room, electric engine room. It's only one deck for living spaces, but to reduce the pressure put on the cargo, we actually elected to have separate levels. And so this is going to, you'll see probably later, or you saw in the video, host that second level, second deck. This has been just pulled out of the steam box. They cook for up to 6 hours. Is that true? 5 hours, 5 or 6 hours, and we use all the offcuts to fire that. And these folks come in and they can get it in, clamp it in 5 or 6 minutes. But you can watch this on our video, so you can verify what I'm saying. I might be off a little bit, but it's really something to watch. And it's really interesting because it takes 1 or 2 people to prepare that piece, you know, assess it, make sure the lines are right, even sometimes get it in, not for a full dry fit, but to look at it in place and put the Dutchmans and then get it in the steam box. And then there's about 6 minutes where you see this many people, they just show up, clamp it all into place, and they're gone. So that's really interesting as well. And you can see where the frames have been faired and not faired. And this photo shows that the frames have been faired to receive this beam shelf. You can see the wood's a bit more brighter. Manu's the star of the show. Why is that? There he is again, Manu. We have other people working here, I swear. This is a photo looking aft. So where we saw Menta putting the tar, he was standing more or less at the end of those dead woods, at the end of these frames. And that's the steam box that you can see with the plastic jugs on top. So the steam box is right in there inside. Are there any questions at this point?
No questions right now.
Okay. Just shifting track a little bit. We also have the nonprofit organization because we are located in one of the poorest communities in all of Costa Rica, financially speaking. And so we work, it's also a fishing community, artisanal fishing. They use boats, open boats about this size to do this sustainable fishing as part of the cooperative. And so what we've been doing is kind of introducing them to the idea of wooden boat building as well as sailing. So they're all fiberglass boats, and there's quite a number of issues associated with that, which is kind of a whole separate topic. But these are the 2 boats that we've built as part of our courses here, which are free for the community. And the only reason we've had to put a pause on these public courses is due to COVID. This is, if you remember that drone shot where I said that's actually where I live with the mangroves, this is right under that house. That is that house or building structure in that shot. This is a weekend scene, which I love very, very much. In the background, you cannot quite tell, but that's the water. And this is just doing some work on the small boat, doing some forging. We had Ship's Koi Forge and a whole bunch of other folks coming down. So we got the forge set up, and very typical for us, you see a couple of dirt bikes. But this is a weekend scene, just to give a bit of context. Okay, I'm gonna shift track now to talk about our masts. Is this okay? Are we doing all right? I feel like I'm talking so much.
It's great. I think everybody's riveted is way.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to shift track now to talk about our masts. Our masts are the only pieces of wood that are not going to be from Costa Rica, and they are from Haida, which, if you're familiar, is a essentially sovereign island nation off the west coast of Canada. So it's north of Vancouver Island, north of Port Townsend. And we have our Sitka spruce masts sourced from there, all of our spars, sorry. And they are from a Aboriginal owned, family run salvage company. It was very important for us to really establish a very high standard for social and environmental and moral factors when it came from bringing in wood from outside of Costa Rica to be able to justify that decision. Now, if I'm talking to boat builders, it's very easy to justify, why did you bring your masts in from somewhere else? Well, I think most of us know that between Sitka spruce and Douglas fir and the west coast of Canada and the Pacific Northwest of the United States, these are the best mast timbers in the world. And so that was an easy decision for us. to say this is important. So I'm just going to go through this a little bit. This is just a transition slide of the beautiful old growth forest, which we don't touch in these areas. This was a canoe we got to see. We had a really wonderful tour. This is Tyler York, who I keep trying to get down here. And this is a canoe that's being built up in, I think it's Masset, if I remember correctly, northern part of Haida Gwaii. And it was really spectacular to be invited there. And Lynx, my partner and co-founder, even was invited to participate a little bit, taking off a little bit of this red cedar canoe. This is a photo on Haida Gwaii, which I have not been here to see this photo. This was sent to me of one of our spars. And this is one of the guys using an Alaskan mill to get it down to square. This is a beautiful story and one we're very proud of, but it is turning into such a logistical nightmare. It almost inspires you to want to start your own shipping company. It's really interesting. The biggest issue is that the trees are too big to export from Canada and import into Costa Rica. And here I was thinking that Canada knew how to export big timbers. Apparently not. It's interesting because they don't fit into a 40-foot container. That's where the problems really start. And so then we have to look for a whole different type of shipping company. And it's interesting, you want to think outside the box, but really what a lot of people want to do is ship outside the box, which by the way, we can offer because we don't ship within containers, so that we're not constrained in that way. Another thing that's very interesting with these timbers is that they're too large for, oh my gosh, I'm spacing on the word because I've spoken so much, not fumigation, but heat treatment. And they're simply too large because they want to kill any bugs or bacteria or anything like that that might be coming down, to kiln dry it to a low level temperature, because we don't want to kiln dry it to a really high temperature. But they're too large for that, and there's no kilns in all of Canada that can handle it as far as we've known. And we've even been looking as far as the East Coast. There might be one that we found in Ontario, but to ship it to Ontario and then back to BC, it's crazy. So we're learning the hard way. We intend to be making a timber schooner ourselves to address this issue in part. We will be the first people in the history of the world to ship Sitka spruce into Costa Rica, and our in-house trade and logistics division put it on the map and actually had it recognized as a species that should be imported. So for the first time ever, Sitka spruce and Douglas fir, we went for a couple others while we were there, are now part of the official register of species that can be imported into Costa Rica. That was another achievement. There's Lynx, my co-founder, just hanging out. This is on the salvage, it's part of the salvage yard. These are not our spars. And just a gorgeous photo of some of the red cedar that's up there. Okay, back into the pitch part, but I'm getting near the end, is people always talk about our competition, and there's a few different ways to look at that. I personally don't agree with any of them. I really honestly believe we don't have competition. So some people say that this is an example. This is a rendering that belongs to Oceanbird. It's not belong to us. It's simply available on the internet. This is a concept which apparently will be built at some point soon. But according to our own in-house calculations, this vessel may burn up to around 11 tons of bunker fuel per day. And so for me, even though it looks really wonderful and it is a step in the right direction, which I acknowledge, this would not be a competitive vessel for us because they do not offer emission-free shipping, which is the same for any other ocean-going cargo ship at this time in our area, which will be the Pacific Ocean. Just a little bit about our team. Myself, my two co-founders, Lynx and John. Lynx is from Costa Rica. Lynx is from Quebec. John is from Costa Rica. And Pat Woodland, maybe some of you guys know Pat Woodland. He is from Cowichan Bay on Vancouver Island. He is a long-term remote advisor for us in Master Shipwright who built Pacific Grace. And this is just a little tiny view at our core team. We have up to 45 people employed at any given time at our shipyard. Around 50 to 60% of which are from Costa Rica. As some of you may have noticed, we've received quite an increasingly high amount of press, and actually tomorrow, it's not set yet, but tomorrow I have a pre-interview with CNN. They're considering doing a 4-minute video piece on us, but the attention has just really gone up, and especially with things such as COVID and the disaster, to call it that, with the Ever Given Suez Canal blockage. We're just receiving increasingly high levels of interest. So we're thankful for that. So just to close out a little bit with some financials, this is an example scenario. So just to share a little bit, we've pretty much more than filled Ceiba with cargo, which is very, very exciting to be able to announce. These are signed letters of intent. So they are light contracts, but we've more than filled Ceiba, which has caused us to explore other routes and other things. One of the routes we're looking at right now is Columbia, New Jersey with coffee. And this, if anybody wants to take a screenshot or they'll have this to save, they can contact me about this. This is a route we're looking at for the future. But basically what we're really trying to communicate is that this is a for-profit company. And to be a for-profit company, we also believe to be a true for-profit company that is successful, we believe that you also want to take care of people and the environment, but as well have a positive financial bottom line, which is why we are funded by investors. And we are approximately 42% funded right now for Ceiba.
Oh, this has been just amazing, really informative. So John Monroe asks, what can you do about fire protection? Is there a sustainable fire extinguisher?
I've not really thought about that before. John, you're putting me on the spot.
Do you throw bananas at it?
Yeah, John, we throw bananas at it.
I mean, because there's all that wood and scraps and planing shavings, and you're running a steam box on wood. And I was just curious how you have to be pretty careful, I would think, although it does rain like what, 3 times a day.
Well, during the dry season, we are really careful about that, especially, I mean, this is a topic that people don't like to talk about, but when you do have smokers and there's all these light dry shavings, it's a real concern. We abide by you probably doesn't look like it, but we're inspected all the time by the Ministry of Health, I think, because they just want to see the ship. And so we have fire extinguishers positioned all over, as well as water stations, labeled water stations all over. But we also have cleaning crew that come and clean up all the shavings on a very regular basis so that they're not building up, which they would otherwise be building up.
Yeah, that's the best. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right. And then Paul Eisenhart wanted to, one more time, how big is Ceiba? Could you give us the length, beam, mast height, and tonnage?
So Ceiba is, I do it sometimes in meters, 145 feet overall, 136 feet on deck. So 145 with the bowsprit. She's 24 feet beam, or 8 meters beam, and 12 to 15, 16 feet, depending on her cargo loading. That would be the draft. The masts are approximately 100 feet over water, or maybe 110. Sometimes I have it memorized more in meters. And her weight will be approximately 350 tons unloaded. So she can also carry 250 metric tons of cargo.
Okay. And then Sakai asks, you seem open to Pacific trade or Caribbean Atlantic trade. Do you have a preference, or is this thinking about additional vessels under the Sailcargo banner?
That is thinking about additional vessels. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so our primary route is the PAX line, Pacific Exchange, and that will be going from Costa Rica up to either Port Townsend or Victoria, or both, 2 times a year via Hawaii, and then straight down the coast. We've we've pioneered this route, but what I mean by that is we've promoted it and communicated that and sought letters of intent for that. But it's very interesting because we've received much higher amounts of interest from cargo clients on the East Coast, on the Eastern Seaboard. And so we're trying to navigate that. And due to the fact that the ship is already full with letters of intent saying that they will be filling her, we are looking at a expansion.
Wow, that's pretty exciting. What will what's your average, I know you can't tell me how long it would take, but what's to do a round trip Costa Rica? What is your guess? Is it to do your route?
So we're quite conservative with our estimates. So we want to build in space, build in more time here and there, but we say it will take for a full round trip. So from Costa Rica up to call it Seattle would be, and back down would be about 5 months. This is stopping 6 days in each port that we've outlined with an average speed of 4 knots. Now, 4 knots is a low average speed, especially when you take into consideration that we should be able to use the electric engine quite regularly through the solar charging as well as the propellers that we have, especially when the ship is a good sailor, is the idea. So she should be able to, under ideal conditions, well, under regular good cruising conditions, maybe hit 9 knots. We asked our architect, really we want to have a vessel that can sail. But under, when you're running downhill or downwind, we hope to be hitting a lot higher, even 14 or plus. We'll see, but that would be with the wind and current.
Sockeye asked, what is the rig of the light blue boat? It looks like it might be a lug.
I swear that changes every weekend. It may have very well been a lug rig in that photo. We have a bunch of bamboo that we just switch it up. I've even used a Singer sewing machine from around 1960 to sew a ridiculous square rig for it. But it may have very well been a lug rig there. We have some French sailors from the north coast of Brittany, and they're always very actively promoting the lug rig.
That's great. That's great. How do you pick your crew? I mean, I know you get people from all over the world. How do you select who you accept?
We are blessed to have applications every single day from all over the world, and really they don't even have to speak English or Spanish. It's really just applications from everywhere, and it's very my job to select, which is my job, is to select people, is very difficult because I swear everyone who applies is I want to hire everyone. Like the people that apply to our project, the people that are attracted to our project are so self-motivated, are so driven, are so inspirational in their own way, even when they are quite young people who may or may not have that much experience, or some of them have more. But the decision making is the hardest part. But lately what we've been looking for more than almost anything else is well, hey, do you want to really come with us on this voyage? You know what I mean? It's some people, we have a minimum of 3 months. So I've worked on several different projects, a number of different projects, and sailing vessels and shipyards and all these things where the minimum commitment can be as little as 1 week, which is not something that I personally have, I don't want to criticize, but in my personal experience, I've found is very challenging. Because honestly, when you break a week down, you get there and people are going to have a beer with you on the first night, and the second day, then you learn how to hold a paintbrush or a drill, and and then it's Friday. So we have a minimum of 3 months, but we're beginning to look for people who have that longer term vision more than anything else.
Mm-hmm. Will the rigging be automatic rigging then, or like electrical rigging?
No.
Manual?
So we've elected to have 3 masts, which will be gaff rigged, or as they say, schooner rigged, on the mizzen and main mast, and also having a gaff on the foremast. And she'll have 3 square sails on the foremast. The reason for this is to have a lower, well, there's several reasons, but one of them is to have a lower, sorry, I'm getting a bit tired. What is this one called? point of resistance. So it's a bit safer as well. You're going to be having shorter masts is what that is. As well, you're going to be having smaller sails. Each sail ends up being smaller than if it had been a 2-masted vessel.
Mhm.
But it will be manual, like traditional.
Okay.
Lower center of effort. Thank you. I'm spacing.
Tell us a bit about your training programs. You were teaching English as well as boat building?
Yeah, so our nonprofit, Astero Verde, which means Green Shipyard, is a registered nonprofit association here in Costa Rica. We are an affiliate of Amigos of Costa Rica and the Cruza Foundation, which are United States-based recognized 501c3s, which means that if you donate to our nonprofit through them, your donation would be eligible for tax deduction. So just to say that that's a very established, young, but very established little entity. We were offering, and we continue to offer, boat building, blacksmithing. We did some lofting courses, and we were really growing with that very rapidly, actually, and the community is responding very well. But then COVID shut down the public aspect of that, which was a bit of a curveball. But so we shifted our efforts to another part of the nonprofit, which is the tree planting. And so we were able to kind of expand our efforts with the tree planting because that still allowed us to give income to people. So we want to always get donations and investment back into the community because they were outside, it's open air, there's enough space. So we've really been focusing on our tree planting, which, by the way, it's going on right now. You can plant a tree, contribute to regenerative shipbuilding, let me know. But at the same time, we're always looking for these other courses and waiting and preparing for them to come back. We also offer, so with COVID, we also shifted to operating a community garden. So food security, again, we're located in a very poor community. So food security became a bit of a concern simply because we didn't know what was going to happen. So we started that, which is now expanding and growing. And we are starting a community garden in association with one of our employees who's also growing on her own to create her own project, as well as bread baking. And so there's kind of like some different things came out of COVID.
Yeah, wow. All right, here's a couple of questions. Megan McLeod asks, how large will the crew be on the Ceiba?
We will have a professional crew of 12 and a maximum space of 24, so 12 guest crew.
And how many will be apprentices, and your overall thoughts on sustainable crew, schedules, training, turnover, etc.?
So we do, as I said, we aim to have 12 permanent crew or professional crew, and then up to maximum 10 to 12 spaces for guest crew, which may or may not be youth. I hope to have exchange programs. We also hope to partner with the Maritime College here in Costa Rica and really doing training on board. It's very important for us because we aim to be flagged in Costa Rica. However, there's no established ships of this kind. There's no history living of ships of this kind. And so we want to have a Costa Rican crew. It's a Costa Rican flagged vessel. However, that's not really possible until we're able to invest in the training. So right now we have sent to date two Costa Rican young people. They're my age. They're not that young. One was younger than the other. We've sent 2 of our team members sailing on the Tres Hombres to try to begin to do that education. But there'll probably be a transition phase when Ceiba's launched, where we'll have international crew coming in and doing quite a bit of training and investing quite a bit of training, and then shifting to a more Costa Rican based crew.
Mm-hmm. And John Monroe asks, what's between the ribs? Tar, bear shit, he says. Red lead, haha.
Hi, John. How are you doing? Nice to see you. Part of my French, it's tar and or bear shit, which is the term for my experience when you mix the tar with a substance that will make it thicker. Well, he's not totally convinced. It's typically tar. So what we are not using glue. You may see in some pictures or some videos that sometimes we do use glue. That's for what we call Dutchman's or graving pieces. So we don't always use a perfect piece of wood. This is a really interesting thing. When you go into yacht building or very fine joinery, you're going to be using a perfect piece of wood, which means you're going to be rejecting a lot of pieces of wood if they have, you know, a little bit of sapwood that enters, or a knot, or some internal rot, or the termites, which are a big deal. You're going to be rejecting a lot because you have a very high standard. For two reasons we don't do that. One is because it's not really possible when you look at the scale that we're doing. There's always going to be something with these the largest timbers we can possibly find. There will always be some sapwood or something. But as well, we actually try to use the wood as much as possible. And so we don't want to reject wood because that's in a way a form of waste. It's not wasted, but we want to put that to good use. So we'll use glue in our Dutchmans as well as pegging it with trunnels. But what that is tar. And so it's simply a water barrier is what you'll see between the frames.
Jen Rabinowitz asks, what kind of woods are you using? And I know that's a really big question for you.
I'm ready for that question. So we have a couple types of woods here. I'll try to focus on the ones that are most relevant for us right now. Yeah, I'll use these three. Okay, so here's just for reference. This is teak. This is plantation teak from Costa Rica. All these woods are from Costa Rica. And I don't know, you can't really see that. It's, in my opinion, not the tightest grain. It's not the world's best example of teak. So believe it or not, here we use quite a lot of teak, and we use it for infrastructure, as in the form of entire whole tree posts. That's what we use our teak for, because there are plantations all over the place. So we actually only use this for secondary infrastructure, which is really interesting. And then I'll hold these up together so you can see them. These are just the two, we use about 5 types of wood, or 6. These are 3 of them, just to give you the color difference. You can see those. And this one, this is called huachipiling. G-U-A is pronounced in Spanish wa, and it is, my understanding is, it's a native term or word for tree. So you'll have a lot of wa trees like Warumo, Huachipiling, Guanacaste, many wa words. So this is one that we use for our trunnels. And this is a very straight grain wood. It's really quite yellow, and we use it for our trunnels. Some of our trunnels are wooden pegs that we use instead in the place of metal fasteners. And they can be 6 feet long, the ones that went through our stem. So that's a great hardwood. This is our keel. This is Tamarindo del Monte, Dialium guianese. If you'd like, I can not pronounce, but send you the Latin names. This has the sapwood. This is one of the hardest woods I've ever come across in my life. I've been very lucky in my former life, when I wasn't an entrepreneur, to actually work in wood shops. And I got to work with fustic and purple heart and green heart and lignum vitae and all these things. This wood has something really special about it, where it's so crazy dense and the silica content is so high, you can't work with it. We learned that. This is what our keel is made out of. This was brought down by a hurricane. That's why we have the permits to use it. Now, I don't know, but in my experience is that this has a much higher silica content, or is much rougher on blades than lignum vitae is, which lignum vitae is denser. It's a much denser wood. But this is, if you could just feel this, like it sinks in water, to put that out there. And then this is Spanish cedar, just to put them beside each other. And Spanish cedar is actually in the mahogany family. It's a type of mahogany. And this is what the majority of our frames are made out of. This is also what cigar boxes are made out of. So it's still a hardwood, tropical hardwood, but it weighs, I'll make a fake scale for you here. This is how much, this weight is much lighter, relatively speaking. But what's really interesting about this is it's extraordinarily rot resistant. So its Spanish name is Cedro Amargo, which means bitter cedar, and nothing wants to eat it. But something that's really important to know is that for the ship building, so the hull of the vessel, everything is from Costa Rica. All the wood is locally sourced, and we have environmental permits for all of it. As well, I'm sure I'll get into this later, but we have an inherent tree planting program. So we estimate that we'll probably use around 400 trees. That's just a rough estimate to build the ship itself. And we've already planted over 2,000 trees, which we maintain and create stewardship for. And this year we're looking to plant 3,000.
Wow.
Wow, that's the long answer.
Yeah. What materials have you decided to use on the sails, if you have decided yet?
Yeah, that always comes up. We haven't decided. Yeah. Modern sails and ropes or lines are made of plastic, not our favorite material. We have not decided yet. We will leave this till the very last minute. Every single presentation I do, I say, if you know a really neat company, please let me know. I would love to have photovoltaic flexible sails, so solar panel sails. But we're kind of waiting for something to come to us to make that decision.
Angela Hewitson asks, do you believe any existing tall ships can be converted to serve a similar mission as Ceiba?
Yes, I do believe that. I firmly believe that. And we are contacted, especially since the advent of COVID, we are contacted almost regularly by former passenger vessels that want to shift to being cargo ships. And this is absolutely possible, especially bearing in mind that a significant number of passenger vessels were originally or formerly cargo ships. And so it's really just bringing them back. But the biggest question with that, which I always pose to the people contacting me, is, are you willing to recertify your vessel? If your vessel is from Canada or the US or wherever else, are you willing to reflag it if need be? And as you can imagine, if somebody has a certified registered vessel that is a passenger carrying vessel in the United States, that's a very high level to achieve. And to simply give up that flag and that certification, that's asking a lot, because you may never get it back if you're grandfathered in. And so for a lot of people, that's a really hard question. But it's such an uphill battle, especially for wooden vessels in Canada. No, it's not happening. Wooden vessels in Canada, you will not be certified as a new build or grandfathered in if you're not Canadian, already flagged in that way. It is not happening. And Salts, which is really close to Port Townsend, is trying to build a new passenger vessel for about 10 years out of wood, and they cannot do it. So you have to look at flagging somewhere else.
Wow.
But then you're really giving up that status.
So tell me a little bit why it's so challenging to get in Canada to get a passenger vessel flagged, a wood vessel flagged. Mm-hmm. Explain that a little bit more.
I hope I don't say too much. Canada doesn't believe in wood. Canada has an unhealthy relationship with wood. Canada loves the pulp and paper industry. We love cutting down virgin forests for pulp and paper, which is really funny. But we don't believe that wood is a good material for boats. Why? Really not sure. It's been a good material for 2,000 years. But if anybody's familiar with the Blue Nose build, that turned into quite the situation when they tried to, I believe, now don't quote me on this, I believe they tried to change a small aspect of the rudder, or they wanted to build a new rudder instead of restoring the existing wooden rudder. And it turned into this huge fiasco. And I think the rudder ended up costing over $1 million. Please don't quote me on that. Look it up. $1 million Canadian. And in the end, they said, no, it has to be steel because it's new and you cannot use wood. It's a wooden boat. And they ended up even secretly launching the ship to test the rudder. It didn't work because the worm gear, the steering system is designed for a wooden rudder, and they made the same one in steel. It's just nuts. But it's like, they don't believe in it. It's unsafe for passengers. It's never going to happen. The end. One day, maybe I'll work for Transport Canada, and I'll get my red pen out and scratch some of those lines away.
I don't believe that's true in the United States, is it?
No, it's not. Now, it's interesting because there's international regulations, and international regulations basically apply to all countries that acknowledge them. But what you can do is either apply, so wooden vessels are basically not, in my understanding, are basically not accepted. They're just dangerous. The international world says they're dangerous. Now, if you want to have one commercially flagged, what you would do is apply for an exemption either at a vessel level or at a nationwide vessel. And my understanding is that the United States and England have applied at a nationwide vessel for an exemption, which is why you have such a gorgeous fleet of commercial wooden vessels, because you have a nationwide exemption, which is something I hope that we can establish in Costa Rica, because it's a blank slate. And so I would hope that we could apply for a nationwide exemption from the outset.
So Sockeye asks, is Transport Canada the agency you're talking about? And did Pacific Grace, were they approved before more strict rules came into play?
My understanding is yes. Yes, that's when, and, oh, I'm forgetting her name now. There was a huge issue years ago. Oh, I can't believe I'm forgetting her name. A young lady fell overboard on the Picton Castle, which calls out of Lunenburg, Nova Scotia. It's not a Canadian flag vessel, but that's its home port. I'm sorry, I apologize for forgetting her name. I didn't know her, but she fell overboard and she went missing. And this turned into a Transport Canada mess, like the biggest investigation. She was the daughter of a famous hockey player. So we can laugh at that because the Canadians really freaked out because it was a hockey related incident in some way. But that marked a shift that, in my opinion, I was quite young at the time. I was like 15 or something. I even recognized it at that time. Wow. When Laura Gainey fell overboard and went missing on the Picton Castle, going out, I believe they had just left Nova Scotia, and then Transport Canada kind of attacked. And in my opinion, we've never really come back from that.
Wow, that's incredible. All right, shifting gears a little bit. Chris Hartley asks, will you be able to use commercial ports, or do you need to find alternatives since your cargo won't be in containers?
So we will be able to use commercial ports. We won't be using container infrastructure, but most container ports will have sort of secondary docks, whether that's for pilot vessels or tugboats or other workboats that operate within the port. Those are the kind of docks we'd be looking at. We do favor port size such as Port Townsend or Victoria, or maybe a little bit larger, but staying away from ports such as Seattle or Vancouver, only because we would also be swallowed up in that way. But the interesting thing is that we will also be independent. We're not dependent on using those ports. And sorry, we would also need to establish relationships beforehand and clear a lot of things beforehand.
Mm-hmm. So I know the woman from the Cocoa Forge, I don't remember her name, here in Port Townsend.
Susan Fitch.
Yeah, so our very own cocoa shop is going to be using Ceiba for shipping. Is there anybody else you can share with us that we can get excited about that's going to be using your services?
I haven't asked permission of anyone else, but there are what's really popular in the Pacific Northwest is the chocolate, more so than coffee. Yeah, we have coffee interests in other locations, but you guys are the chocolate people. I'll say that. And in British Columbia as well. There's going to be some chocolate coming up.
Yeah, that's great. All right. Well, I guess we'll sign off if there's no other questions, but this has been really fun, Danielle. Thank you so much for zooming in from Costa Rica. We wish you well and the best, and can't wait to see Ceiba off of Port Townsend. Thank you all for being here with us tonight. And thank you, Angela. And if there's nothing else, have a great evening, everyone.